So we got the man, Mike, back here again to share with us dating tips as an immigrant.
Sure.
Right? Because I have a lot of students who haven't come from the country. You know, a lot of respect to people to leave their home countries, come to North America, try something totally new, and go after their dreams. So, ton of respect. You know, my parents were immigrants, but there's different distinctions. You know, and also a lot of hang-ups that guys have about them being foreign in a different country. So, I want to bring you on here to share what that's like, and also give guys some tips and encouragement when you're an immigrant or a minority in the country, and how to attract more women.
Sure. So first of all, let me just share a quick story. My family and I moved from the Philippines to Canada when I was 16 years old. And for the first few years, it was really tough because back then I didn't speak English. I had really bad social anxiety. And if you've watched the other videos, I mentioned that I used to be 60 pounds overweight. Wow. And when I came to Canada, I was working these low-level jobs, right? You know, I was working at McDonald's and Subway. And because that's, that's kind of like what everybody did, right? You know, not to be, racist or stereotypical, but you see a lot of brown people driving cabs. For me, I'm Filipino. A lot of Filipinos end up working in the service industry. And then, so I thought, this is it. This is how you get started. But then I started noticing other people, who were also of different race, right? They're popular. They have a lot of friends. They have beautiful girls around them. So now I started thinking, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. And that's when I realized that there's a big difference between being someone foreign and being someone exotic, right? It's a difference in your mindset and the way you present yourself, right? So I'm going to give you guys 5 tips, right, on how to succeed socially, whether you want to make more friends, you want more options in your dating life as an immigrant. So tip number 1 is to pick your role model. So kind of going back to my story, when I was younger, I started to look for other immigrants, right, who were also successful socially. They were club promoters, they were successful entrepreneurs, and again, they were around beautiful women and they had a lot of friends. So I started asking myself, how do I become that person? And I paid really close attention to what they were doing, right? And again, if you've watched the other videos, I've kind of talked about this. I paid attention to how they dress. I paid attention to, how they behave around other people. I paid attention to the way they pronounce things, right? Their enunciation, right? So that's why I put in a lot of effort to lose my accent. Because if you think about it, 16 years old it's quite old to learn a new language, right?
Sure.
When I was younger, I knew how to read and write in English. I just never had the opportunity to speak, right? So I put in a lot of effort, sounding to sound very North American, and that really helped me build my social circle very quickly. Moving on, tip number 2. Again, going back to my story, I mentioned earlier that I used to be overweight, and one thing that I didn't mention was I had really bad acne when I was younger. My face was covered with pimples, and it was really bad. So what I meant by that second tip was, again, control the controllables, right? If you have bad skin, see a dermatologist. If you're overweight, sign up for a membership. Start eating healthier. And if you don't have good style, then there's many style resources online that you can find that will help you improve your appearance. Again, this goes back to the theme of being exotic, not foreign, right? You want to pay attention to what other guys are doing successfully, regardless of their race, because success is a pattern and all you have to do is follow it.
I love how you said to pick your role models. As well too, right? So I remember specifically there was one guy who was actually on a TV show back in the day. It wasn't a popular show, but I saw him at a club in Vegas, and I was like, my jaw dropped. Like, I'm not into dudes, but man, this is one of the best looking dudes I had ever seen in my life, and I'll throw a picture of him on here. And he was an Indian guy, right? And I was like, oh wow, I didn't even realize that he was foreign or he was anything else, right? And it just hit me that it doesn't necessarily matter what race that you are, right? You can maximize your looks depending on whatever race you may be. There's guys who are Asian, who are Indian, who are black, who are whatever it may be, Russian, this, that, whatever your ethnicity is, you could still present yourself in a certain way and look awesome, right? So this guy was a great role model, and I actually sent him his pictures to a friend of mine who's Indian as well too, and I was like, hey man, this is the role model right here. Like, this is the guy. This guy is one of the best looking guys I've ever seen in my life, right? And now that's a role model for you, because we were actually talking earlier about how we'll pick pictures of people who are around the same height, same ethnicity as you as well, too. Somebody that maybe you want to model a little bit and somebody that you want to look like. It's a great, great, great tip and a great thing for you to keep your eye out for.
Moving on, tip number 3 is to change your environment. The mistake that I see a lot of immigrants commit when they move to a new country, Canada or the United States, is they try to, find other people from their country, right? If you're from Vietnam, you start hanging out in the Vietnamese community. If you're Chinese, you start hanging out in the Chinese community. And in my case, me being Filipino, it's easy to, get into your comfort zone and start looking for other Filipinos, right? But the thing is, like, if you're in a brand new country, you have to evolve, you have to embrace a new culture. You have to learn how people do things because, don't recreate the country that you came from, right? If you want to succeed socially in a new country, you have to adapt and evolve. And to me, that meant I had to change my friends. I had to really find other people who are locals, right? So I get to understand their, I get to speak their language. I get to learn about their customs, their culture, and that really allowed me to, get all these other opportunities, right? Regardless of my race, that would have been that wouldn't have been available to me if I didn't do that. Tip number 4 is to share your culture. Whether you're from India or you're black or you're Asian, you're actually at a massive advantage because you have life experiences that are unique to you, right? Compared to other white guys, they have a very similar upbringing, but you have such a unique advantage because you speak a different language, you have different types of food from your country. You have different customs and tradition, and you can use that to your advantage when you're telling stories because you can talk about something unique and interesting and new that, whether it's a girl or a guy that you're talking to that they've never heard of before. So use that to your advantage.
I just want to add something to that as well, too. And, one of the main interests that I definitely hear from girls and also from guys as well, too, is travel, right? How many people say that they want to travel and experience and try new things? So now, that's a great point you make. You're actually coming from a position of power where you can now educate them, like you said, on something that they haven't experienced before. And you could talk about, there's so many different distinctions with other cultures. I can only imagine. I haven't been around too much, but I'd be fascinated to hear about how other cultures don't care as much about materialism, right? And how they're closer with their family. And, studies show that there's a lot of cultures that are way more happy with more simple things. These are really, really hot topics that are very interesting to talk about. And this is a tip that I tell guys all the time. One of the biggest struggles guys have is, what do I talk about with her, right? That's a question that we get a lot. And the more interesting knowledge and different knowledge that you have, you can now educate and show her something new. And that is one of the best things that you could do to make yourself now, like you said, almost like a position of authority, right? And now somebody who is giving some serious value in your interactions by now showing her, I can show you the world, right? Showing her something that she hasn't experienced before, and something that's totally new. I think that's such an awesome thing that you mentioned there.
Tip number 5 is to cut your losses. I mean, look, dude, if you're talking to someone and they're not into you and they write you off just because you look different, that's probably not a person that you want to be around in your life anyway, right? And again, you're so much more than your skin color. I'm sure you've got, dreams, passions, and ambitions that you can talk about. But if the person you're talking to would just, not want to hear anything about it just because of how you look, I mean, that sucks, right? Like, you don't want that person in your life anyway. So that's my last tip right there.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and I have a few very good friends who are immigrants, and when I hear their story, about having to come from another country, and be an outsider and all the work and the things that you had to do, not only amazing people, because the harder your struggle is, usually the more amazing the person winds up being, but that's just something that is so incredible, and such a foundation story that is great to share. Guys hear like my story about how I used to be fat and had all this anxiety, right? And it makes them respect you so much more. So like you're saying is, look at, you being foreign as an asset rather than a detriment, right? Because guys are saying, okay, now I'm foreign and now I don't fit in this and that. It's actually, I'm starting from a disadvantage, where it's actually one of the most powerful things that you possess is by having that experience, overcoming it, and being such a fantastic person, and being able to share, like you said, all the knowledge and great things that you have. So it actually becomes a very, very awesome asset that you can use So I love that point of view, man. Thank you for sharing
Thank
that.
you.
Definitely
Appreciate it.
awesome.